Understanding cardio intensity, this is something that I want everybody to get a good understanding of for the sake of not only your long term goals, your long term efforts in the gym, but also so that when I speak to you, you and I are speaking the same language, same understanding. I talk a certain way with trainers and coaches who know my lingo, my language. Most of my clients have learned a lot of this stuff. I like to explain things, sometimes over explain, but this is good for everybody to be on the same page because this is going to help you long term get to your goals or maintain where you're currently at. And you honestly, the majority of the reason this is important is so that you don't get suckered into somebody else's, supplement or whatever it is that they're selling you. This is going to help you understand your body and your efforts so that you don't start wasting money. I don't want to say wasting time because you can always try new things. But when you start wasting money on things, that's when I start to get a little irritated. Not with people, well, yeah, with some people, but not like with a client, but with just like the way that the system is set up right now. Being intentional with your cardio, a few bullet points here. So, along the spectrum of goals, weight loss and improving body composition is one of the main focuses. So, the majority of my clients, the average person, would love to improve body composition. The world we live in, you have to be vigilant. If not, you're going to be out of shape or you're going to feel out of shape. You're not going to. Most people need to, stay focused on their health and wellness. If not, they start to feel physically gross, I guess I should say. I know that after a few days of not working out, I just feel like I'm melting into goo, and that's not what's really happening. That's psychological, and even myself, who understands it, struggles with it. But nonetheless, everybody has, everybody wants to improve body composition, and it doesn't matter what it is that your actual goal is. And I'll hopefully bring some clarity to that. Using cardio will help you manage weight, improve your performance in everyday life and hobbies, and can be beneficial for resistance training. So, three things that I hit on there: weight management, right? You want to be doing cardiovascular work, not because it melts fat or anything like that. It's more so just about energy balance. It's more so about like how active you are. People who are more active burn more calories, and even if you're not losing weight, you're at least offsetting some of the excess that you might be taking in. I'm, no stranger to that. Improving your performance in everyday life and hobbies. This is kind of what I was getting to, that no matter what your goal is, cardio can help you. So if you're somebody who wants to strength train for, a certain hobby that you have, what's a stupid hobby that some people do? Stupid. Not all, or no hobbies are stupid. If you're doing something for yourself, that's great. I was going to say like ultimate frisbee or something like that. No matter what your hobby is, even if it's just strength based, cardiovascular work is going to help your muscles perform in anything and everything. It's going to help you all the way, all around. And I said, to reiterate, it can be beneficial for resistance training. No strength coach worth their salt is going to tell you just focus on strength training. Don't worry about anything else. Like, unless you're, well, even if you're just bodybuilding for size, coaches program cardiovascular work so that they can optimize their fat burning potential and obviously improve the physique. But outside of that, even that, that would be the closest anybody would ever get to like just do, strength, and you're, unless you're strongman type strength training. But whatever, that we're getting outside of what we're trying to focus on. There's nothing that cardiovascular work is going to be beneficial no matter what you do. Understanding the different types of cardio will help you focus your efforts. It will keep you from underdoing it and overdoing it. So these two bullet points kind of dovetail into each other. What ends up happening is that people will, do cardio or a hit workout or whatever, and they'll feel really good about it, right? Great. But what I tend to see is people will do the wrong type of intensity, and they won't understand. Like they're feeling good. It's a day that they get after it, but rather than focusing their energy to a certain intensity, they just go, go, go. They're, maybe they're doing a class, maybe they're working out with somebody, they're feeling good, so they hit it hard. Great. But if it's not part of a program that has an intentionality where you undulate in intensity, you're going to be more fatigued, maybe sore, depending on what the workout is. Even if you don't feel sore, the amount of intensity you put in will require your body to recover a certain amount, right? So if you're like doing sprints and you're like, med ball slams and everything, and you're just getting after it, even if you don't feel sore the next day, your body is tired. It's called CNS fatigue, central nervous system fatigue. Your body just doesn't want to do anything. And this is something that we can get into later on how your body will regulate your energy output. So even if you hit it hard, really hard one day, the following day you're gonna just be less active. Your body knows how to regulate your energy output. So then what ends up happening is like you miss a couple of days of exercise, a couple of days of working out, and then what happens? Well, I got to get back after it. You think that it's motivation that is getting you back in the gym when it's really your body being like, okay, hey, now we're rested and recovered. Now you can go back to the gym. So if you have like a really hard workout one day, 3 days later, you're like, all right, I have to get back to it. Like I'm really motivated. I'm feeling good about myself right now mentally and all that. Again, you feel like it's the motivation, but it's just your body finally releasing the brakes. If you force yourself to go through your workouts after a hard bout, if you try to force yourself day 2 and day 3 for more hard bouts, then you're either gonna not show up, you're gonna underperform, you may even hurt yourself. So underdoing it, overdoing it is kind of the risk that you have with this type of stuff. So real quick, this is what we call this is one of the tools that we use. This is called the Borg rate of perceived exertion. This one is on a scale of 6 to 20. The basic RPE that a coach will use, I use it all the time, is on a scale of 1 to 10. How hard was that, right? Like a 9, you're getting after it. 5 or 6, you're like, that was okay. This tool, I like this because it helps you correlate heart rate with the number that you're using to define intensity. It's a quick little background. Gunnar Borg is the guy who designed it. He used healthy, active young adults as the anchor. So we're starting with healthy young adults, but there is variation, which I'll explain in a second. So because of this, multiplying any RPE value by 10 will give a surprisingly accurate prediction of their real-time heart rate. So if you see that the scale starts at 6 rather than 1, it's like, well, why does it start at 6 rather than 1? It's because if you multiply by 10, that's usually where people's heart rate is at that time, right? So if you're just chilling, no exertion at all, 6 times 10, 60 beats per minute, average resting heart rate, depending on the person, is about where you're going to be. And as you increase your activity, that heart rate starts to correlate with the number, again, multiplied by 10. So if you're doing like moderate work, that's like a 12. You multiply that by 10, it's 120 beats per minute. And I'll show you here in a second a little bit more clearly. Individual variability, while the mathematical correlation is a fixed rule, RPE times 10 equals beats per minute, the percentages shift individually based on age. A 20-year-old hitting an RPE of 20 will be at 200 beats per minute, their max, while a 50-year-old hitting an RPE of 20 will still feel like absolute exhaustion, even if their heart rate caps out lower, around 170, 180. And this is a very rare situation. I mean, like very rarely do you see 50-year-olds just like max, peak 20, peak 19. Can it be done? Of course. But the type of training that people do at this age, closer to my age, we're rarely going towards that 20 RPE. So just something to consider. So MyZone customizes the percentage to the individual client's age via the Hunt formula, while the Borg scale gives the client a way to feel their data. Let me rephrase that, or let me reiterate that so I can emphasize better. MyZone customizes why this makes MyZone better. MyZone customizes the percentage to the individual client's age via the Hunt formula, while the Borg scale gives the client a way to feel their data. So as I said earlier, you can use both of these. If I didn't say it, I'm saying it now. We use a couple different tools to figure out what it is that you're feeling. If I'm in person with somebody, I can ask them, where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10? I can look at their heart rate. I can visually see their output, both physically and, from their respiration. These are things that will inform us. And there's just so many different variables, depending on the exercise. Like somebody might be trying to run, and even though they're at a decent heart rate, their legs might get localized fatigue where they no longer, the heart rate might not correlate. Sprinting on a treadmill versus sprinting on a bike versus sprinting on an elliptical. There's a lot of different things that are gonna play into or take into effect, that is going to affect all these different systems and scales, right? So again, we've got your heart rate monitor, we've got the RPE, the scale that you can multiply to hopefully get somewhere within that range. Coach will ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? And that's going to be what you're. We'll kind of combine all of that. We can get pretty close more often than not, but there are variables like beta blockers, things like that. So this is where we kind of pull it all together with what we were talking about and what we typically use in terms of like heart rate monitors, things like that. The first column is RPE, the Borg scale, and it compares it. It talks about the physical sensation. And then you've got the formula that gives you the heart rate. And then on the very last column, the zones that will typically correlate with these scales or with your beats per minute and things like that. And again, it's pretty close. A lot of this stuff correlates pretty well. The blue zone is kind of in this lighter area. This is where you start to warm up. You start to get a little bit more intense. And it's the one thing that this is about cardio, but I want you guys to understand too that the different colors work differently in strength training. Strength training is small bouts of spiking your heart rate. This is and you could end up in the red, you could end up in the yellow, but then when you're resting, you'll be in the green, you'll be in the blue. Sitting down changes your heart rate. It brings it down quicker. If you lay flat down, it's going to bring it down even more so. So just understand that this is about cardio versus strength training. Pure cardio versus strength training, you're going to, the heart rate monitors are going to respond a little bit differently. It's just going to look different. And this is why it's important to learn these systems. So just a quick overview. We're going to go over target heart rate, the MyZone, the MEEPs as they call them in the cohort, the Borg RPE, the talk test. The talk test is something I should have emphasized a little bit more, but we'll get to that here in a second. Primary focus, protocol style, and then best use case. So we've already gone kind of over these percentages or the Borg scale, and we know that it kind of correlates with this lower target heart rate. The talk test, this means that if you're in this zone, effortless, like you're just talking, you might be on the treadmill, you might be taking a walk with somebody, doesn't matter, you're just talking. No big deal, nothing to write home about. And the primary focus of this is just baseline circulation. Whether you're, we don't train in these zones, right? But this is just for basic everyday function. This is you walking to your car, going to get the mail, whatever you need as a human being. You need basic baseline circulation. It's like, it's like a river getting blocked, and then that's a bad example. Like a creek that stops running, right? The water becomes stagnant. As a human being, you need to keep moving. If not, the systems in your body start bogging down, and we can get into things about like health implications and stuff like that. I know some people deal with like leg circulation, like blood circulation, the lymphatic system, all those type of things. You need your body to be constantly circulating and working so that it doesn't become stagnant. Could lead to bad outcomes. Tracking recovery speed and initial preparation. So this is about recovery and prep. So like on both ends of the spectrum too. This could be something where you bring yourself down to this baseline to, after like a long bout, how they have you cool down. This is kind of where you might end up. Or initial preparation, right? It's like you might be ramping up and you might be in this zone for a little while, depending on the workout. And this is either passive rest or warm up, as I said, kind of alluding to the initial preparation. And some people might live in this, just because their heart rate isn't conditioned yet, and they might have just like a higher heart rate. So, just something to consider. Let's see, best case use, measuring how fast a heart rate drops after tough intervals, essential for assessing cardiovascular efficiency and recovery readiness. So again, going back to that recovery speed that we talked about, if we spike your heart rate, get it into the blue, the green, the red, there's a formula that we don't have to get into, but like the amount of time that it takes to get down to this baseline is how we look at your heart rate variability. And this is a very important metric that we're not getting into now, but it is something to think about whenever you're, when it comes to health and longevity. Like your heart, whenever it gets stressed, everybody's heart gets stressed. I mean, let's not get into, stress in terms of like, everyday life, but your heart's response to that stress is for it to, increase the beats per minute. It might stay there for a little while depending on what you're dealing with. But once the threat is gone, once the stress is down, your ability to come down to that baseline is a big health indicator that some people don't consider. So you want to be able to spike your heart rate, and you also want to be able to recover from it. And this is what training these different zones hopefully will do. Blue zone, this is your aerobic base. This is like your warm-up stuff. So 60 to 70%, 2 MEEPs per minute. You're going to see that every zone just increases the amount of points that you get in our system. It's that you can correlate like a totality at the end of the month and like cross-reference that against like how many workouts you did, things like that. The number is going to give you a story on, your efforts. The RPE here is 11 to 12, so 110 to 120. Talk test, you can still give full sentences, right? Like some people, when you build yourself up to that aerobic base where, these are your walkers. These are people who love taking walks and they're like, hey, it's part of my routine. They go walk their dog. These are the people that like just like brisk walk. And that's just, some people just naturally live at that base. I am not one of those people. I'm bigger, I'm heavier, I'm lazier. I love walking, but I would more call it strolling. People like that are walkers, like they just, hoof it. A lot of it, I think, from what I've heard, is that people like, that were either younger or like, shorter legs. They're like, well, I always had to like try to keep up with people. And this is the pace that I kind of got ingrained into my body. Makes sense, right? And then some people just like are always on the run, always like gotta go, go, go. Cool. But this is a good base to have. Let's see, primary focus, fat oxidation, mitochondrial health, and aerobic base building. Now, the fat oxidation part is important, but it needs context. People like to say, oh, well, I hear you have to be in a fat burning zone and blah, blah, blah. Yes, like fat burning. This system or this zone gets you into that fat burning, energy system. But what people don't understand is that, yes, you're tapping into fat for what you're doing in that moment, but that doesn't negate the fact that if you're eating in excess or eating in balance to where your weight is, then the fat rebuild is still going to be there whenever you put the food back in, right? This is what I was talking about earlier. I think I mentioned it, where a bodybuilder will do cardiovascular work, and they usually do it in this zone because they're creating a deficit through their food, and then to save their joints, to make it a little less miserable, they do this aerobic energy base type cardio. They'll do 30 60 minutes just like incline walking, stair stepping, whatever. And again, it's allowing them to use fat. It's a very slow process. That's another thing that people don't understand. It's a very slow process, but they dedicate their efforts to this that way that whenever they're losing weight, the majority of it is from fat. And it gets a little complicated, but we'll touch a little bit more on that later. So protocol style, LISS. So LISS, just for your definition's sake, LISS means low impact steady state. Low impact steady state cardio. This is the opposite of HIIT, HIIT, high intensity interval training. Again, there's good and bad for both, but this is a protocol that people need to consider. This is not technically zone 2. Ignore that for now. This is the second zone in the my zone levels, right? So I apologize. That is a typo. Zone 2 we will discuss here in a second. Continuous and steady effort for 30 to 60 minutes. So this means that the protocol should be, I start people at 20 to 30 minutes, but aiming for 30-minute sessions to have as your baseline is a good place to go. No more than 60 minutes. This is something that you dedicate an hour of your day, if you can, when you get there, and you are allowed to go 60 minutes. And I say allowed because my training program is very rigid. It's no more than 60 minutes. Very few people will get there. Very few people have the patience, or the desire, but that is the protocol, and you'll see why here later on. And ideal for recovery days, long active rest sessions, and systematically building a robust aerobic foundation for higher intensity work. You got to train these zones, guys. It seems trivial, like, well, this isn't, very. You're being sold HIIT all day long, and it's like, well, this isn't very intense. It's like, yeah, but if you keep doing the high intense stuff, not only are you missing really great aerobic systems training here, you're overdoing it. This goes to that overdoing aspect that I was talking about. And then this is where we start to get into a little more higher intensity stuff, 70-80%. I love this zone. This is true zone 2 training, as it is defined from the performance aspect. This is 70-80% heart rate. This is, again, you increase the MEEPs, 13 to 14 on the RPE scale, 130, 140 beats per minute. Talk test, somewhat breathless. Okay, so you and a friend are jogging on the treadmill, and you guys are having a conversation. Yeah, so how are the kids? And yeah, we're gonna go do this. We're gonna, it's this labored conversation, but you can still do it. It just takes effort, and you have to build yourself up to that. Lactate clearance is the primary focus. Heart stroke volume and aerobic endurance. Heart stroke volume is something you guys don't have to consider, but basically it's about the pumping of your heart and how much blood it can pump per beat. The stronger the heart, the more volume of blood that it pushes out into your body, and that means that the more it can get out per stroke, the less beats per minute that you need. You don't have to, think about a boat, sinking, and how they, you got to like bail the water out to keep it afloat or whatever. So think about your heart like that bucket, and you either have a small bucket and you can do a bunch of scoops, or the stronger you get, the bigger the bucket. You can take big amounts of water, throw it out, and then it's just a better, I don't say better, but like you just get a lot more out of it, right? Let's see, tempo cardio, sustained moderate pace effort, 20 to 45 minutes. So there's that cap again. The blue zone, I said no more than 60 minutes. On this one, no more than 45 minutes. This is my protocol. You're going to have other trainers, coaches, or whatever that are talking about, well, you can do this like, I'm talking about consistency, and I'm talking about adding this to a broader program. I'm not talking about pure cardio for the sake of only doing cardio. You start off with 20 minutes, you break it down. You start off with 20 minutes. This is something where, if you're a runner, great. If you're not a runner, an elliptical and a bike are great options, because here you can manage the pace by increasing resistance or the revolutions. Those are variables that you can control, and it's a good way to just monitor where you're at and kind of stay in there. So if it starts going below 70, increase. If it starts going above 80, kind of back off, or maybe take the tension down. And this is good for developing mid-range stamina, pace management, and mental grit. Perfect for bridging the gap between base building and high intensity intervals. So this allows you to challenge yourself, right? When you build that aerobic base first, now we're starting to challenge ourselves. Now we're starting to get into, that labored breathing. It feels great once you start to like get that. Once you get that rhythm, it's a really great feeling, and you can start to like get lost in the zone a little bit. But it has to be the right type of cardio too. Like I said, I can run in this tempo, but or in this range, but it's a lot easier to just do the more passive type cardio, I should say. And it's easier on the joints if you're doing the bike and the elliptical. Now we're talking about threshold training, right? Now we're starting to push where that lactic acid starts to build up. Lactic acid is that burning sensations in your legs, whenever you're running, things like that. And it builds aerobic power. This is in the 80 to 90% intensity. So you're working 4 MEEPs per minute, 15 to 16 on the RPE, again, 150 to 160 beats per minute. Talk test, very breathless. You might be able to get a word or two in, but it's like, hey, I'm busy, right? And again, the protocol in this is threshold intervals. I like to break it down into blocks, right? These are like your 5 minutes on, 2 minute walk type thing, but your intensity is building with the, or I'm sorry, your intensity is being pushed up toward that 80 mid 80s to high 80s. This is boosting top end fitness without the severe neural fatigue associated with maximal hit. So again, this goes back to that idea of recovery, right? When you do hit stuff, your body takes a beating, your central nervous system takes a beating, and your body will make you pay for it. And it's a good feeling, right? Whenever you've like done a really crazy hit workout and it's been after, I don't know, a long week or a weekend or whatever, and you go home, you're exhausted, but it feels good, right? You shower, get all that, the sweat film off, and you're like, man, that was really great. And your pores are open and all that stuff. But just remember, with that higher intensity stuff, it just takes you longer to recover. With this, this is where you got to kind of feel it out. This is where it's like, man, like I felt like I was pushing it, but I'm sorry, I didn't feel like I was pushing it, but man, I'm still pretty beat up. Okay, that just means you have some more room for improvement. And again, boosting top end fitness without severe neural fatigue. That's one of the best. This is a good way to improve that. Again, 3 to 5 minute blocks. You do four of those. 20 minutes total in terms of the training in those blocks, and then like the warm up and the cool down. I'd say probably about 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes at most, but it depends on the individual and what it is that you're doing for that training. And then we get to the hit. This is pretty self-explanatory, right? 90% target heart rate, 4 meters per minute, because you shouldn't be spending a lot of time in here, but you're rewarded for your efforts. 170 to 200 in terms of your max heart rate. You are not talking during this, right? You don't see guys in the NFL combine, having a conversation with somebody while they're doing their sprints. Max VO2 anaerobic power and fast twitch muscle fiber recruitment. This is where you generate power, speed, all that stuff. Not just lower body, upper body too. This is why we do slams with the med balls. This allows you to generate that power. But the protocol style for this cardio is hit, short sprint intervals, 20 seconds. We usually do a 20 on, 10 off. Sometimes I'll break it. It's usually 8 rounds. I'll sometimes break it up into like 4 rounds, do a walk, 4 rounds, and then the cool down, right? So you have to manage this as best as you can. And this is a double-edged sword that this is something that this goes to the frustration that I was talking about before, where people, you're getting sold on, you want to do you got to do hit, and like they sell you on these like quick, high intensity, like cookie cutter type programs. These cookie cutter type programs, just they bother me so much because it's just so it's like, hey, that was a really great workout, I really felt it. It's like, well, what did you feel? Were you just miserable? Like people do, and nothing against like boot camp style stuff or like, these higher intensity classes, things like that. There's a place for them. But as the consumer, you have to understand what it is that you're getting yourself into and what it is that it's doing. Because if it just gives you a good feeling in that moment, right? Hit workouts are great. I love hit workouts. They make, especially when I really push it, man, there's nothing better than, post hit workout, sprints, things like that. It feels great. But if the program that you're following, the gym that you're going to, all they do is hit, good luck, because you're going to go there. At first you're going to be motivated because you're excited about the new thing. Good luck, because there's only so much that your body can handle. You should honestly only be doing this about once a week. The average person. I'm not talking about athletes. I'm not talking about the youth. I'm talking about the average consumer. 30s, 40s. The person who has the 9 to 5, whatever. You don't need to be doing hit 3 to 5 times a week. That's, first of all, it's miserable. Second of all, you're going to hurt yourself. Third of all, it's just not sustainable. Once a week, you should be spiking your heart rate. Once a week, you should be hitting those intervals. Even myself, like I could probably do it twice a week if I'm really motivated, but I'm really not that motivated. I'd rather focus on weight management and, recovery and flexibility, especially as I get older. This is not it in terms of, like more is not more, less is more. And this is the lesson that we have to take from this whole presentation. And I'll wrap this up next with this next slide, and it'll kind of show a little bit better. So as I said, where to put your efforts. When I was talking about less is more or more is not more. So we went over all of these, right? Not necessarily in this, well, yeah, we talked about it in generalities, right? But this gives you an overview. So look at these three categories. So forget the ones that we just went over. Look at these three categories. We've got lose weight, we've got improve fitness, we've got maximize performance, right? The bulk of what you do every week is dependent on your goals. The average person should always at least start in the lowest column here, lose weight, and then work their way up to improve fitness, right? And I would cut it off right there for somebody my age. But I'm a little bit different because I have the education and I've got the experience. My baseline is a little bit different than the average person. But if Joe Schmo, that is my demographic, but isn't obsessed with this stuff like I am, has a 9 to 5, 2 kids, T-ball, whatever, like they don't need to focus on the higher intensity stuff. The average person needs to start here, and this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of like the type of things that people do, the walking, the outdoor stuff. That's what you should be focusing on to build your base. Now, once you do that, once you've done that 3 to 4 times a week, now we can start replacing with some of these higher intensity areas, right? I think that for somebody like me who is former athlete, I don't say athlete like I wasn't a great athlete or anything. I was just I developed athletically. I can live in this green square right here because one, the very light is not enough for me. My base is too efficient. I need to at the very least be in the blue, likely more in the moderate, and live in that moderate for as much as I can, and then start to flirt with the higher intensity stuff. So I'd say on average, it should be in the improved fitness column, the light, the moderate, and the hard. When I'm feeling great, if I have a week where everything is lovely, everybody is good, life is just smiling sunshine on me, yeah, I could probably get one of those maximum effort days in. But I gotta really be motivated. And it's usually with like a friend or somebody that, wants to do one too. It's hard to get motivated to get true 90 to 100% intensity, right? Usually, like, that's why clients love doing it with me because, like, I gave them the protocol, I coached them, I could watch them, it was great. But if you're on your own, it's very rare that people will be in this area unless they get suckered into some, program or class or something and they tell you that this is the end all be all. Again, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a CrossFit workout, with a 45 workout or whatever boot camp. So nothing wrong with that, but do not be convinced that you have to do that repeatedly to get to your goals, because you just can't sustain that type of intensity. That should be like once or twice a week. The majority of what you're doing should be, for most, especially like once I get towards 50, over 50, it'll be in this green, blue, and gray area. But right now, I'm blessed. I can do what I'm doing. Definitely get some light stuff in. But if I was gonna break it down, I'd probably do like one day in the light, and then like 2 days in the moderate, and then one day in the hard. So that's about 4 days of cardio, right? 2 days of strength training, one day of cardio, maybe take a rest day. And depending on how I'm feeling, I might do one of those, higher intensity ones. So that, it is what people should be focusing on. You guys have to remember where your efforts are. If you don't, you're going to burn yourself into the ground. Then you're going to miss days at the gym, and then you're going to try to overdo it. And it's just this negative feedback loop that is not necessary. You just have to say, if you did 6 days a week, 60 to 70% in that light category, your life would change. But you have to be consistent, and consistency starts with that base foundation of things that you are not only able to do but are willing to do. Nobody wants to get up early in the morning for an all-out, hard to maximum effort workout, especially when you've just done or haven't recovered from the other one. It's easy to start building that routine of that 60 to 70% walking your dog, taking a walk in the morning, walking on your treadmill, getting on your elliptical, getting on the bike. So much easier to do that than the misery that comes with a lot of these max effort workouts. And again, take it from experience. I've done this. I've burned myself out and run myself to the ground. A lot of it was youth, pride, ego, whatever. It's all gonna, it all balances itself out though, because my joints started acting up and I had to take a step back, and I'm just not as motivated anymore. I'm tired all the time now. Like, you think I want to go take a nap right now. I'm working right now and I want to go take a nap, but it just depends on where you're at in life. So those are the bullet points that I wanted to share with you guys. Please, please, please ask questions. Go back and look at this stuff. Google it, AI it, whatever, and this is gonna hopefully build a better foundation for long term health. So let me know if you have any questions.